So, welcome to the live stream, and what I think is probably one of the most exciting live streams of 2022. And why do I think that? So, basically, we have Rocket Lab, which has their Electron rocket, and they're going to attempt a recovery of their first stage booster. And of course, you might be familiar with SpaceX and how they recover their boosters. So, it's really exciting to see that there are some other companies out there that are also trying to do this. And I really see this as a huge step forward for the space industry in general if they can pull this off. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this rocket launch today, and I hope you're just excited as I am. So we're going to go over all the things about this rocket and this launch, and of course tune in to the Electron live stream to see the recovery attempt in action and also the mission and everything about that. So stay tuned. There's going to be lots of exciting stuff coming up. The launch is scheduled for I'm in Germany right now, so it's going to be 12:41 in the morning here, which is 10:41 UTC time. Of course, on May 2nd for the UTC, but it's May 3rd here in Germany. So a little bit weird with the dates. And of course, in New Zealand, it's also already May 3rd and it's in the morning. So yeah. Really looking forward to this, and hopefully this is going to be the day that it goes off. It's been delayed a lot over the last 2 weeks. It feels like we've been waiting forever. The name of the mission is There and Back Again, and I feel like I've been there and back just waiting for this happening. So let's see if this will be the one. They have good weather, and they've checked this rocket over like 18 times, I'm sure, because of course they're also really keen to see this one be successful. If they pull it off, that'll be really crazy because, of course, if you remember back to the SpaceX days, they had 10 failures before they got it right. So, yeah, let's get into it. First, let's switch over to the mainstream. Let's see what's going on over there. So here we have the Electron is sitting on the pad. So it looks like she's fueling up and she's going to be getting ready to go here pretty soon. But before we start getting into the biggest part of this mission, which is, of course, the recovery, I think that's why everyone is excited about it. I think it's a good idea to go over some of the payloads that are going to be aboard the There and Back Again vehicle. There's going to be a bunch of them. I think there's about 30 total payloads that are aboard, so it's kind of a rideshare type of mission. But there are three main ones that I think are really cool, and I just want to quickly talk about them. The first one is the Aurora satellite. This is actually a really cool satellite because it's built by Aurora Propulsion Technologies, and it has two experiments kind of on it. One of them is kind of experimental. The other one is a little bit more tested. Basically, the job of this satellite in the future will be to try and deorbit space junk and also old missions that want to remove stuff from orbit. Of course, we know orbit's getting a bit clustered with all of our launches, so vehicles like this are going to hopefully help clean things up. But how's it doing that? So it basically has some water thrusters on it. Basically, it's a special type of thruster that they've developed, which basically just heats up water and shoots it out the other end. And you can use that to, of course, deorbit a satellite if you're able to connect to it. But they also have a cool thing called a plasma brake, and that's kind of like this boom wire thing that's sticking out on the bottom there. Basically what this does is it uses the ionospheric plasma that's high up in the upper atmosphere, and it creates a Coulomb force that actually slows down the satellite without propellant. So also a pretty cool innovation that's basically taking advantage of the atmosphere of Earth in order to solve our problem, essentially. So pretty cool. Next up, there's the unseeable satellite called Bro-6. This is a bit of a kind of a spy type of a satellite. It doesn't actually do spying, but what it can do is it basically tracks all the worldwide shipping, and it can detect your ship even if you don't have a transponder. So watch out if you're a pirate; they will find you. And this is one of the things they advertise, is that they can track illegal activity on the seas and stuff like this. So I'm sure there's a lot of security and people like that would be interested in this, getting data from this type of satellite. But But yeah, it does a really good job of this, and they already have a couple satellites up that are doing it already, and they're just adding to this constellation. And last up is a really interesting satellite called Unicorn 2, and this is made by Alba Orbital. And essentially what this is doing is it's able to take pictures on the night side of the planet. Of course, we're used to Earth observation satellites taking images on the day side, but this one's able to do it in the night side really well. So it can kind of track human effects in the night, because of course we don't just go away at night. There's also things we do at night, and it's going to be doing this, kind of tracking where populations are, where light pollution is, things like this. Yeah, so a little bit more about the mission. It's going to be going into a sun-synchronous orbit that's about 520 kilometers in altitude. And it's kind of basically a polar type of orbit, and this is what is being shown on screen here. So if you're interested in the orbit that the vehicle is going into, it's going to look a little bit like this. Yeah, let's head back to the live stream here. They're introducing the helicopter. I think you should listen to this.
Specifically modified with an auxiliary tank to allow for extra fuel to complete today's offshore mission. For anyone unfamiliar with this vehicle, it is a massive machine, roughly the size of a bus. Normally used in search and rescue operations or to ferry large groups of people, the S-92's size and the power of its twin engines are being utilized today to manage the approximately 1 ton weight of Electron's booster.
So this is the helicopter that's going to be used to catch
zone is about
the Electron
150
booster.
nautical miles off New Zealand's coast. The helicopter will wait in this area, a safe distance from where Electron is expected to return, before it attempts the catch. To do this, the S-92 is equipped with a long line with a capture hook that will be used to snag in Electron's parachute cable as it slowly descends over the ocean. To practice our rocket catching skills, we've carried out many mid-air capture tests prior to this mission. These were conducted by dropping an Electron first stage test article from a second helicopter, deploying the stage's parachute, and then using the S-92 to catch the stage as it descends. And I'm going to take you through a quick rundown also through the recovery process once today's mission leaves the pad. At about 2.5 minutes after liftoff, Electron's first and second stages will separate like normal. Electron's second stage will continue on to orbit for payload deployment, while Electron's first stage will reorient itself and begin its descent back to Earth. It does this with tiny thrusters on the main body to tilt the first stage on the correct angle to slice through the atmosphere on the way back down. After deploying a drogue parachute at 13 kilometers or 8.3 miles altitude, the main parachute will be extracted at around 6 kilometers or 3.7 miles above Earth. This double deployment of chutes will help to dramatically slow the stage to a speed of just 36 kilometers or 22.3 miles per hour. This is expected to take place from about 8 minutes and 12 seconds in the mission. As the stage enters the capture zone, our helicopter will swoop in and rendezvous with the returning stage and capture it by its parachute line. And so, as we approach the T-minus 12-minute mark in this count to our launch, our operators on console will be run through the go, no-go.
So we're just 12 minutes away from the launch, and I think she did a good job of explaining kind of how they're going to go through the recovery process of the mission. And you saw some pretty cool footage of the helicopter there that's going to be doing the catching, the Sikorsky 92. I might be saying that wrong. But it's a pretty cool helicopter. It has quite a good capability. But let's just quickly go down what the vehicle looks like, the Electron itself first, and then we can get into more about the helicopter and the recovery. So basically, this is a breakdown of the different structures of the vehicle. So you see here that the vehicle is mostly made out of carbon fiber, and the first stage is kind of the majority of the rocket, which is kind of taking up most of the screen, and it's just the top little bit here that's the second stage. That's going to continue to orbit. That part's not going to get reused. It's just the main booster on the bottom here that's going to get reused. And as soon as it separates at about 2.5 minutes, it's basically going to flip around and come back. And they have 9 engines on the bottom of this rocket, and the upper stage just has 1 engine. And what's interesting about these engines, and leads to their simplicity and their cheaper cost, is actually how they work. So typically engines kind of look like the left diagram here, where they kind of have a complicated hydraulic or a complicated propellant lead system that goes into a preburner that will power the turbine, which is the black piece there, that then spins the pumps and sends all the fuel and the oxidizer into the combustion chamber. So a bit of a complicated system, and this kind of is the reason why rocket engines, the engines themselves, tend to cost a lot of money and be difficult to make. But Electron is the first vehicle that actually uses an electric-driven pump engine system. So basically, instead of having all that complicated plumbing going into a preburner and having like exhaust and all this kind of stuff in the engine, it just has an electric motor that spins the pumps. So it's like a vastly simpler system. The only penalty is you have to carry the batteries, which is kind of not a very good mass thing. But basically, battery technology has gotten a lot better recently, and so they can pull this off. So really good and a great way that they save cost. So how does this vehicle recover itself? Well, basically we have 6 phases of the mission. It's going to start with the launch, where the whole vehicle is going to take off and start flying to orbit. Then we're going to get to a separation, which is going to happen at 2.5 minutes. And the second stage will continue on to orbit, and the first stage will shut down its engines and begin the flip, which is the third part. So it'll flip around, orient itself with the engines pointed downwards. That's really important because all the heat shielding is on the engines, not on the rest of the vehicle. So it has to come in that way, otherwise it might burn up in the atmosphere. Then fourth, it's going to do the re-entry, where basically it's going to come in nose first. There's going to be lots of heating. We're probably going to lose connection to the booster if they're live streaming on the booster. So don't be freaked out if that happens. It doesn't mean that the mission is lost. Then it's going to deploy the parachute essentially at, I think she said it was at about 8 kilometers or so. And then it'll descend slowly from there on the parachute until it will get caught by the Sikorsky 92 helicopter. And that they do have a live stream on the helicopter, so we might get to see this actually in action. Although they did kind of scale down our hopes by telling us that it might lose connection, but I'm still hoping for the best. So they introduced their Sikorsky a little bit in their talk, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about the stats of the helicopter, because these are really interesting. It's basically a workhorse vehicle. It can carry like a ton of weight. It has 19 seats aboard it, so it's kind of for moving people around. It has an operational weight of about 8,000 kilograms and a payload capacity of about 4,300 kilograms. Although it looks like they've kind of souped it up with some extra stuff, like an extra fuel tank and some, I think they've reduced the mass of it a little bit as well. And this should help them pull off this helicopter catch. But the interesting thing, though, is that the actual mass of the Electron booster is only about 950 kilograms. So it's totally within the payload capacity of this helicopter. So theoretically, it should be able to comfortably pick this thing up and carry it around as much as they want. And basically, yeah, they started flying this thing out like about 30 minutes ago. So it's already flying to the landing zone and hopefully gearing up for a really exciting catch. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. So now the Electron vehicle is just going to be going through some fueling processes, of course. It runs on liquid oxygen and liquid kerosene. So the liquid oxygen has to be constantly filled into the tanks. You want to put it in at the last possible moment, basically, because it's cooled down cryogenically. So it's like at like minus 180 degrees Celsius or whatever. And it will be boiling off always because the air is just going to be hot. So they need to put this in at the last possible moment. So you'll be seeing vapor clouds and them filling basically up until about 2 minutes before the launch. And what's really interesting is that the color of the vehicle is actually black. But when they do this filling, of course, you can tell where the liquid oxygen tanks are because it'll be completely white in that section. And this is because the oxygen is so cold and the walls of the rocket are so thin that basically water in the air freezes onto the booster. So it basically makes you can totally, it's almost like there's like it's almost like it's see-through and you can like tell where the liquid oxygen is. So yeah. I always find this really cool. Other rockets aren't quite so visibly showing their the tanks like this because they don't quite have as thin walls as the Electron does. Of course, CFRP is one of the strongest materials you can use for a rocket, so they can get away with really, really thin walls, and that's why they basically have this thing where, oh, check this out. This is the view from the helicopter. It looks a bit cloudy. I wonder if they're going to catch it above the clouds or below the clouds. That'll be interesting.
No worries there, but we'll come back to you with an update as soon as we hear more from our launch director.
Yeah, I hope we get the live. I hope we get the live view all the way when they catch the booster. That's going to be really incredible if we see that. I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, like I was saying before with the boosters, the other rockets don't have. You don't see quite the liquid oxygen tanks so clearly because their walls are thicker, and so they insulate against the heat better. But the CFRP on the Electron is just so thin that it just, the cold just goes right through. But that's really one of the incredible things about the Electron is that it's so light. It only weighs, like, the whole vehicle when it's fully fueled only weighs like 12 tons, which is, for a vehicle that goes to orbit, is just an incredibly low weight. And of course they can do this because of the carbon fiber that they're using. There's some videos of, like, if you look in their rocket factory, they just have the boosters just sitting on like these rollers, and you can like move them around just with like people. Like, you don't need a crane or anything. They're that light that you can maneuver them just by hand. It almost reminds me of, like, how like amateurs try to move around their rockets, right? They just all put it on their shoulders and just carry it out to the launch site. You can't quite do that with the Electron, but it's almost on that mass level where you could really move it around by hand.
Time, it's 10:49
I
a.m.
can confirm I am actively monitoring mission cord, LV cord, range cord, and safety net.
Just to finish up there, I just want to confirm
All
that we have a new...
Please be prepared for a go-no-go poll at T-minus 12 minutes.
Okay, so we have a new T0 time at 10:49 a.m. New Zealand local time, or 22:49 UTC. And as you heard from our launch director there, we are about 18 seconds away from the go-no-go poll for this mission. So we'll wait here with mission control comms and listen in to what our operators have to confirm.
So so it looks like they're gonna push it back by a couple of minutes to 10:49, which I think is 10:49 UTC, which would be
stage.
Stages go.
Avionics.
Avionics is go.
GNC.
GNC's go.
VCon.
VCon is go.
T1.
T1 is go.
GC.
GC is go.
PLS.
PLS is go.
RSO.
RSO is go.
MET.
MET is go.
MM.
MM is go.
LD sub.
LD sub go.
All operators, this is the LD on mission. Go sequence is complete. We are T-minus 11 minutes, 24 seconds and counting. We are go for terminal count at T-minus 10 minutes. From this time, the 3-word hold procedure is in effect.
So they passed the no-go poll. We're into the last 10 minutes here. So I guess we were scheduled to go in about 3 minutes here, but they just pushed back by a couple of minutes. Not exactly sure why.
There you have it. We are back on track because that is confirmation from mission control that the systems are healthy, and we will be proceeding with the remainder of the count. The T0 liftoff time is a new time of 10:49 a.m. New Zealand local time, or 22:49 UTC. So liftoff time for our Eastern time zone viewers is 18:49, and for our Pacific viewers it is 15:49. Today is Electron's time to shine, but recently we also celebrated a major step forward in our program for Neutron, our much bigger new rocket. We have broken ground at the location of our new Neutron production complex and launch pad in Wallops Island, Virginia. It's here we are planning to create more than 200 new jobs to support Neutron's development and its launch capability from the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport. Neutron is our new launch vehicle designed to lift 13 tons of payload and to provide a tailored launch solution for satellite mega constellations. Neutron will take Rocket Lab reusability another step into the future as a fully reusable rocket designed to land back on the launch pad after a mission and from there be returned to the nearby production complex for refurbishment and reflight. With construction underway and Neutron's development really ramping up, there are many exciting opportunities to join the team. You can check these out for yourself on the careers page of our website at rocketlabusa.com.
They're always recruiting. So yeah, if you're an American, go and apply. They're always looking for people. Yeah. The Neutron is going to be a really exciting vehicle too, because like she said, it's going to be reusable. She said fully reusable. That's not technically true because the second stage is not going to get reused. It's just the first stage of the booster that will be reused. But we'll forgive her that. Neutron will be a game changer as well because it's basically going to directly compete with the Falcon 9. They have the similar characteristics and capabilities. And of course, they will both be reusable. So maybe they'll also be competitive on cost, which hopefully will get more competition into the orbital launch market. Because right now it's basically just complete hegemony by SpaceX. Like if you're a commercial customer, you go with SpaceX, unless you have a really small payload and then you pick one of these smaller launchers like Electron or Astra's Rocket 3 or something. But yeah, looking forward to Neutron for sure.
Test and verify the orbital stability of that location, as well as test whether communication with NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter can gauge positioning, potentially allowing future spacecraft to determine their location relative to the Moon without having to rely on tracking from Earth. Here's more about the mission and how we'll deliver it to the Moon with Electron and Photon.
So this is the next mission that Rocket Lab's going to be doing. It's basically going to the Moon.
Rocket Lab is supporting NASA's mission to return humans to the Moon. Launching on Electron this year, NASA's Capstone cislunar satellite will orbit the Moon, serving as a pathfinder for Gateway, a moon-orbiting outpost that is part of NASA's Artemis program to return humans to the lunar surface. Capstone's mission is to refine our knowledge of the dynamics of a unique halo-shaped orbit, paving the way for people to follow. The Near Rectilinear Halo Orbit, or NRHO, has an unobstructed view of Earth at all times, and also enables communications coverage of the lunar South Pole, the destination of NASA Artemis astronauts. Most Rocket Lab missions to date have deployed spacecraft to an orbit around 500 kilometers above Earth. But this mission will see us go a little bit further than usual, some 384,000 kilometers further. To get there, Electron will launch Capstone to an initial low Earth orbit. From there, Rocket Lab's Photon spacecraft takes over, providing in-space propulsion to conduct a series of orbit-raising maneuvers. This builds up enough velocity to perform a translunar injection, allowing Capstone to break free of Earth's gravity and set a course for the Moon. Capstone will use its own propulsion system to enter a cislunar orbit.
This is actually a really nice
Traditionally,
animation.
small sats have had to wait years for a rideshare opportunity on a large rocket in order to reach lunar and deep space destinations. With Rocket Lab, the small sats call the shots, getting a dedicated ride to exactly where they want to go and on their schedule.
So one interesting thing about what they said there about how they're going, the Capstone is going to go into a near rectilinear orbit. They mentioned that it was going because it was good because they'd be going underneath the south pole of the Moon. And why is that an important thing? Basically, at the south pole of the Moon, there's a lot of ice, water and ice form. So they crashed a probe into the Moon I don't know, this was like 5 or 10 years ago, and analyzed the products that came out of basically crashing into this crater in the South Pole, and there was like a bunch of ice in this collision. So it tells us that there's water ice on the South Pole that we can use if we're going to set up like a human base or something. Obviously, we need water because humans need water. But the other cool thing about water is that you can use it to make rocket fuel. So yeah, if you just take the water and you split it into its constituents, hydrogen and oxygen, that's the most efficient form of rocket fuel that we know of. And you can essentially do what's called in situ resource utilization. So you can definitely vastly reduce the complexity of your mission by setting up a system where you actually pick up fuel on the moon. And you can land really big things, and you can build a colony. So I think that's probably where human presence would be most interesting.
Sequence, which is when the flight computers on the rocket take over the launch countdown from manual control. At T-minus 1 minute 30 seconds, we should hear the call that LOX loading is complete on Electron, telling us that the vehicle is fully fueled for launch. At T-minus 1 minute, the call will come from mission control that Electron's first and second stages are pressurized for launch and the vehicle is ready. Then we'll move to the final countdown to liftoff at T-minus 10 seconds and engine ignition shortly before liftoff at T0. Let's go to mission control comms now and listen into our launch director take us through the final count.
So only about 2 minutes left, 2 or 3 minutes left.
LD GC on mission.
Go GC.
ECS disabled, pad auto sequence is armed, pad is ready for launch.
Copy.
So the loading is just about complete now. And then basically we'll be going through the final...
Go ahead, Evanus.
Every system is on internal power and enabled for flight.
Roger, thank you, sir. GNC, LD on mission.
LD GNC.
Yes, sir. Confirm all expected recovery ASGOs are green and being monitored.
Confirmed.
All operators, this is the LD on mission with the LD go for launch. From now on, there should be no red flags on your critical LCCs. Econ, LD on mission.
LD VCon.
Confirm all expected flight computer ASGOs are green.
Confirmed green.
Econ, lock auto sequencing confirm.
Confirmed locked.
All operators, we are go for auto sequence start at T-minus 2 minutes. LD is go for launch.
Those are the magic words. Go for launch. So once it goes into the automated sequence, the rocket takes over and it can basically decide it wants to stop at any point because there'll be things that are happening that are too fast for humans to react to. And the computer knows better. It has all the sensors. And it'll also arm the flight termination system, which is a system that goes on to basically all rockets, I believe. And that's in the case that something goes wrong and the rocket starts going out of control. You can always have the option to essentially blow it up.
Avionics. Batteries have switched to internal power. Vehicle is fully on internal power.
I don't believe Electron has ever utilized
ECS is green and enabled for flight.
the flight termination system, though. So, man, I can only imagine what it's like to be one of those recovery engineers.
Complete lock system in recirculation. All anti-gas ring disabled.
Stage 1 and Stage 2 are pressed for flight.
Okay.
Purge is enabled.
This looks like it's it, guys. It's gonna go.
Deluge is activated.
Only the rocket can stop it now.
T-minus 20 seconds and counting. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have
Let's
liftoff.
go, Electron! Woo! Let's see that recovery. This is a great looking launch so far. Really nice day for it, because you can really track the booster all the way up. This is, of course, they picked right now for that specific reason.
Propulsion is nominal.
T plus 31 seconds into the mission, and Electron is airborne after our 26th launch from LC1. We have a great view of that Electron leaving the pad as Electron powers its way to space. We are now at 4 kilometers in altitude, and very soon Electron will reach max Q. This is what's known as the point in the mission when the aerodynamic forces against the rocket are at their peak and
Oh,
cause the
that
most
is the
amount of
view.
stress Electron will
That's
experience
beautiful.
on its ascent. The call that we've cleared max Q should come from mission control shortly.
Makes me want to go on vacation in New Zealand. My goodness. They should put this on the brochure for tourism.
Vehicle has cleared max Q.
Having cleared max Q, Electron's trajectory remains on track and its propulsion is looking nominal as the mission continues to orbit. Soon we'll be coming up to the separation of the rocket stages that will signal the beginning of our Electron recovery attempt. First up will be MECO, or main engine cutoff, on Electron's
Oh,
first
we've never
stage.
seen this camera
This is when
before.
the rocket's
Nine.
This is when the rocket's 9 Rutherford engines on its first stage power down, and then the rocket will drift for just a moment before the first and second stage separate.
I want them
The
to go
second
back to that
stage's
camera.
engine should then start up and power the mission onto orbit, while Electron's booster begins its journey back toward the capture zone here on Earth. As it
You
makes its way home, we'll stay with that live camera feed for as long as we can. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's wait for the call out of those first 3 events.
You could see like all the recovery stuff in the top of the first stage booster
15
in that
seconds to MECO.
second stage down looking camera. You might have to go back to that to see all the stuff that's in there. Maybe it was an accidental that they showed it to us. That happens sometimes.
MECO confirmed.
Okay.
Stage separation successful.
There goes the second stage.
Stage
And the
three
first stage
confirmed.
is headed back to Earth and hopefully into the welcoming arms of the helicopter.
And here we go. It is happening. Electron has successfully completed MECO, stage separation, and second stage engine start. Our Electron recovery attempt is now officially in motion, and we are off to a fantastic start with this mission. As the mission continues for our customers, the fairing protecting their satellites will soon separate and fall away in preparation of payload deployment. We'll wait to see that on our screens.
Oh, there goes
Oh,
the...
and there it goes. We
the
had
nose
that
cone.
visual and audio confirmation we were after of the fairing successfully deploying. A check of stage 2 speed and altitude tells us the mission is continuing nominally, currently at more than 125 kilometers above Earth and reaching speeds of more than 8,000 kilometers per hour. Onward to orbit.
Stage 2 propulsion is nominal.
Guidance is nominal.
I feel like they really picked the weather for today. They really wanted to have like the most picturesque views. It was all. I think that's almost worth the wait, to be honest. You know what?
When the booster's engines shut down, the stage continued to coast to apogee. Now, during that coast, the reaction control thrusters on the stage will have moved Electron into position to better help it survive its hot and fast travel on the way back to Earth. Once we hear the call that the first stage has reached apogee, we know that what goes up must then come back down and head toward the capture zone where our recovery helicopter is waiting for it.
So yeah, that recovery helicopter is probably hanging around somewhere at the tip of the peninsula we see on the bottom of the screen there. I suspect that's probably where it's hanging out. It's incredible how like far away the second stage already is. Like it just takes off and flies away so quickly. But yeah, I hope we get to switch to the helicopter. I guess there's no camera on the first booster, but we will go back to the camera view of the top of the first stage.
Engine, as you heard there, is continuing nominally and firing hot as the mission continues to orbit. All payloads on the stage remain healthy and ready for release to their 520-kilometer circular orbit. The next milestones to watch out for will be the deployment of the first chute on the Electron booster.
Oh, here we go. They do have a camera.
Batteries powering the Stage 2 Rutherford engine. Now, both events should occur within seconds of each other and be confirmed across mission control comms, so we'll make sure to listen out for those. Meanwhile, our recovery helicopter is ready and waiting out over the Pacific Ocean for that drogue chute on the Stage 1 to deploy, knowing that will indicate the main chute deployment and helicopter catch attempt will be only minutes away.
Yeah, I think the one on the left is the first stage. It must be.
Taking a look at the telemetry, Electron's second stage continues on its journey to orbit at a speed of over 11,000 kilometers an hour and an altitude of more than 220 kilometers. Meanwhile, Electron's first stage is on the correct angle of attack to make its way through the wall, as you can see on your left there. Now, that wall is the roughest part of the atmosphere, but thanks to the RCS thrusters we mentioned earlier, the Stage 1 booster is on a very smooth descent. We are coming up to the next gate, though, for Electron's second stage to clear, the battery hot swap for its Rutherford engine. This engine is the world's first to use the electric pump feed cycle for orbital space travel. To keep the propellant pump system going all the way to orbit, we swap out the batteries as they are drained with a new set to keep the system running. We're likely to catch the glint of sunlight reflecting off the discarded battery packs as they fall away, so keep your eyes on your screen for that and your ears open for the call from Mission Control to confirm.
So they get rid of these batteries basically just to reduce the mass of the second stage so they can get to orbit. But it happens really fast, so keep your eyes peeled. There it goes. Oh, it goes so quickly. It's just like there and then it's gone. It's basically that silver package that was on the side.
Battery dose and confirm.
Stage 2 propulsion holding nominal.
I wonder about the toxic effects of dropping batteries in the ocean is, though. It's probably not the best. I wonder if, because it doesn't burn. I don't think it burns up in the atmosphere.
Battery hot swap is confirmed, and so too, you heard it there, the deployment of the drogue chute on Electron's first stage. The second stage is continuing nominally on its mission for our customers. You can see it on your screen there. And for recovery, we are around 30 seconds or so away from the main parachute being released. This action should really slow down the booster's travel to a slow enough speed for our recovery helicopter to safely move in and attempt to capture it.
Okay, so we're nearly, we're 2/3 of the way to orbit right now on the second stage. It needs to get up to about 28,000 kilometers per hour. It looks like we don't have any more on the first stage, though. Probably lost connection. It goes basically as it comes back to the atmosphere. As it comes back to the atmosphere, it creates kind of like a plasma. And essentially, because of that, there's a total communication blackout. And yeah, SpaceX has some fancy stuff so they can keep live streaming, but I guess, this is Electron's first try, so.
Successfully deployed, and the S-92 helicopter can prepare to capture Electron. We'll be bringing you updates as soon as we have them, but very soon we are also expecting SECO on the final stage separation of the kick stage. We'll wait for those calls, but stick with this view from the helicopter as long as we can.
So it sounds like the drogue was deployed, I guess? Okay. Oh, we have the camera back again.
Entered burnout detect.
Guidance is in terminal, 27 seconds remaining.
It's a bit longer of a second stage burn than normal to get us to our 520 kilometre SSO orbit. On the left, you can see the helicopter moving into position, and on the right, we have Electron's second stage travelling onto orbit.
All right, I think so. Basically, we're in orbit right
SECO.
now.
Stage 3 separation confirmed. Normal transfer orbit achieved.
Perfect.
Here
That's
on
the
the
call that
screen
we
there,
wanted.
the Rutherford engine on Electron stage 2 has successfully shut down, and stage 2 and the kick stage will have cleanly separated. The kick stage will now enter what we call a coasting phase while it's in an elliptical orbit before its Curie engine ignites and propels it into its sun-synchronous orbit, where we will deploy the satellites. Now, on the left of your screen, you can see the views from that recovery helicopter. We have only a few minutes left in the capture window where that helicopter can safely recover Electron. Remember, catching a returning rocket stage mid-air is as it returns from space is as highly complex as it sounds, and it demands extreme precision. So several critical milestones must align perfectly to ensure a successful capture. We are on track to do that, but we are prepared with an ocean vessel nearby.
Another interesting thing about that rocket, about catching the rocket with a helicopter, is basically this booster to make that booster, it costs like $2 or $3 million. So imagine you're a helicopter pilot, and there's just like a package of $2 or $3 million falling from the sky. You'd be pretty motivated to try and catch it, I would imagine. So yeah, this is basically the stakes that are here.
Seats here at our facilities. If this catch is a success, it marks an enormous milestone in our recovery program. Let's hope we can see that parachute in the frame of the camera soon.
In the meantime, the second stage is going to be doing, I guess, going through the payload deployments. I think after a bit of a break, though.
We've got various members of our recovery team stationed at the drop zone back on land, out on the recovery vessel for support. Here in MCC, they're in that crowd as you've seen in some of our shots. And of course, we have our pilot in the powerful Sikorsky S-92 helicopter in the sky over the Pacific, ensuring this is all going according to plan. Now you can see some of our recovery team members there. I don't think they could get any closer to that screen if they could. They are no doubt very anxious and waiting, like we all are, for this capture attempt to go ahead.
This helicopter pilot will also be able to say that he's the first person to catch a rocket. Who else can say that? SpaceX has caught like their payload fairings in nets on boats in the sea before, but this is like the first, mid-air catch. There should be like a special helicopter achievement for that,
It was only 3 years ago, can you believe it, that we announced the Recovery and Reusability Program. And here we are today after 5 successful previous re-entries, bringing us to this moment. What you can see on your screen is the line from the helicopter with the capture hook at the end of it. That pilot is moving into position to attempt that catch with the Electron booster underneath the parachute. Hopefully we'll see that on our screen soon. But keep your fingers crossed for this attempt.
I'm really curious how they live track the booster in the helicopter. Like the pilot must have some sort of display that is connected to like the GPS position of the...
Very quickly, while I want to point you to the right side of the screen that shows that the kick stage is on its elliptical path above the world and onward to orbit for our customers. And then, of course, again, we're all keeping our eyes on the left that you can see the recovery helicopter in that zone moving in for the catch attempt. Hopefully,
Yeah, this is definitely fly fishing to the extreme for sure. Hopefully we get a bite. It's kind of like fly fishing for a whale, though. 950 kilograms and 10 meters in length. Theoretically, this is also a really good way to recover because they can basically just fly this
all
thing.
Of you viewing, but the longer I watch this line, waiting for that parachute to come in.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, there we go.
There it is.
First glimpse of it.
Are they gonna get it? I feel like they missed it. I think they can try it again, though. Oh, they have it. They have it. Going by the cheers, I would say they have it.
Absolutely incredible stuff there. We have successfully caught that Electron booster underneath the parachute. So that helicopter, confirming again, has hooked onto the drogue line and has captured Electron. Just incredible. So now the helicopter will bring the stage to land where our engineers will analyze and determine if Electron is suitable for reflight.
Wow. Okay. They caught it on the first try. They can go and one up the SpaceX engineers. They can say, we did it on the first try. Didn't even need to mess up first. How about that? Man, okay, that was more exciting than I thought it was going to be.
Now we're going to take a bit of a break on the webcast, but we will be back with you closer to payload deployment for the primary mission to listen into those final moments from mission control. I'll see you back here soon.
Okay, I really would like to go back and see the quick view that we had of the inside of the top of the first stage. So bear with me here for a second. Let's see. So where was that? That was like somewhere in here.
Feed.
Maybe. There it was, right there.
First stage.
So in here, basically we have the bell of the second stage engine, which is sitting right there, and we're looking down from the second stage onto the first stage. So this is the top of the first stage, and you can see there's a bunch of COPVs here. You can see them kind of around the outside here. I think that these are probably the pressurization tanks that are being used for the thrusters that reorient the Electron booster so that it's always flying basically engines down. And I don't know if we can quite see the parachute in here or anything like that. It's tough to tell. Maybe there's I wonder what this green piece is here. If that is part of the parachute connection or not. Yeah, really cool though. I would need to take like an hour just to analyze this to see what exactly is going on. But yeah, really weird that they showed that. Usually they never show this camera. Yeah, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about this this view? What are we seeing here? Are these the cold gas systems that are controlling the thrusters, or is this? You think maybe they're doing some sort of gas release for the parachutes? I don't know. Could be a lot of things. All right, let's go back to. I guess let's go back to live. I'm not sure how long the delay will be until we get to the payload deployments. But in the meantime, if you guys want to ask any questions about what just happened or about the Electron booster or rocketry in general, feel free. I am here and excited to talk about rockets. And I'm just really taken aback that they managed to pull this off on the first try. Like, no practice required. I mean, they practiced a little bit with the helicopter catch by just dropping the Electron from a smaller height and, seeing if they could pull off the catch. But other than that, like, this is the first full-up test, and they just pulled it off flawlessly. So pretty impressed with that. Yeah, maybe we can talk about the reason why they're using a helicopter. I mean, why wouldn't they just use rockets to bring the booster back like SpaceX? Because what SpaceX does is they just land the entire rockets on a pad in the middle of the sea. And that seems like it might be simpler because you don't have to worry about parachutes and you don't have to worry about getting a helicopter and catching it and everything. So why are they choosing to do it this way? Well, it turns out that because Electron's a smaller vehicle, you have to remember, Electron's like basically has, I think it's like a tenth of the payload capacity of, yeah, I think it's about a tenth of the payload capacity of the Falcon 9. So because it's such a smaller vehicle, it is basically right on the edge of the mass limits of actually being able to have a rocket that goes to orbit. So they don't really have any extra room for like extra fuel to power the rockets on the way back down. And I also think they don't really have, I don't know if they have the capability to relight either. Although I could be wrong about that. They might actually be able to relight. The upper stage can relight, but I don't know if the lower stages can. So basically, it makes more sense for them to, instead of using rockets to bring the vehicle down, from a mass perspective, it makes more sense to let aerodynamics do most of the work and have the helicopter catch it. They could also ditch it in the ocean, but then ocean water with carbon fiber is not really a good combination, and it kind of will just destroy the booster if it's in the salt water. So better to catch it, and then that's how they recover. But then the question comes, like, why wouldn't SpaceX then also try to catch the rocket with a helicopter? I mean, if it works so well, I think that the reason why that's the case is because, Falcon 9 is such a bigger vehicle in general. Like, if you look at the mass of the Falcon 9 booster, I think it's like 24 tons or something. And I'm not aware of a helicopter that would be they could easily get access to that could lift 24 tons. So they really only have one option when it comes to recovery, which is basically turn the rockets on. Yeah, so cool that we have a new way that is now tried and tested for how to recover rockets. I'm sure we will discover more ones as we go along with more companies testing out this recovery system. I'm interested to see if more people try winged flight as a way to recover boosters. I don't know if you guys are familiar with what's called a reverse shuttle, but basically instead of having the thing that goes to space come down like a plane, like the space shuttle did, what if we just had like aerodynamic wings on the booster and just fly the booster back down? Yeah, this could be one way that you could recover a booster, and it kind of makes sense because you could bring it down exactly from where you took off. You wouldn't have to have a drone ship going out to the ocean and coming back and everything. But this hasn't been tried yet, so maybe there are some things I haven't thought about that are preventing it. Yeah, we'll have to see. Anyways, I guess this is one more win for parachutes. Parachutes are a great recovery option on Earth. They really work well. That's another reason why SpaceX chooses not to use parachutes as much, is because they kind of have ambitions for landing on other planets, and they were also trying to use Earth and the Falcon 9 as a test bed for those technologies. And it served an excellent job doing that. Now they can probably go and land on basically any body in the solar system. I'm sure they could pull off a landing on Mars or Moon, no problem, based on the experience of landing Falcon 9 boosters on Earth. It's actually a lot harder to land a rocket on Earth because of the gravity. So, yeah, going on the moon I think might be a little bit easier from a technical perspective anyway. At least it seems that way in Kerbal Space Program when you play. It's always harder to land stuff back on Kerbin. You're asking about what the meaning of the circles on the map is. That is a good question. I suspect that the circles are representing the ground stations, potentially, although that doesn't make sense because some of them are over the water. Maybe they are the dead zones where they don't get anything. I actually don't know what the circles are. You know what? I think it is they are the ground stations. Because you see a bunch over New Zealand. And I think that's where they have lots of tracking. And you see some over Europe. Of course, we have more there. I'm probably wrong about that, though. Don't quote me on it. I'll have to figure that out for the next stream. I'm not exactly sure where they're planning to deploy these the whole satellites, but they have a whole deployment routine here that's planned. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Maybe I should talk a little bit about who I am and why we like streaming these videos. So basically, I am the chief engineer at a student group called Astra, and we're based out of Bremen, Germany, and we want to build a rocket that goes to space. Not all the way to orbit, like the Electron, but just one that goes to the Kármán line. And this is basically a thing that a lot of rocket groups that are in university are trying to do. There's one that has been able to do it in America, and we want to be the first European one that is able to do it. So we're building a whole vehicle that's hopefully going to be able to launch sometime at the end of next year, maybe, and get into space. And yeah, we obviously, being rocket fans, super excited about future developments in the space industry. Why not stream an Electron launch that is going to be groundbreaking and catching a booster out of midair? My goodness. We're also going to be recovering our rocket that goes to space, but it's not going to be quite as extreme, obviously. We're not going to recover the whole rocket, though. We're just going to recover the nose cone. So we're kind of cheating. If we were really serious, we would recover the whole vehicle, right? Yeah, you need really big parachutes to recover like something that's that big, right? And we just didn't have the mass budget on board to be able to do that. But yeah, when you think about an Electron vehicle when it's empty, though, it's only 950 kilograms, the first stage. And our fully fueled rocket is going to be about 275 kilograms. So, like, it's not that much lighter than the Electron itself. So, like, it just goes to show you, like, it's crazy how light they make this thing. It's 12 meters tall, and it's only 950 kilograms. Like, it just blows my mind. To put that in perspective, like 12 meters, that's like a 4-story building. So something that's tall as a 4-story building, and it weighs less than your car. Like, it's really an extreme engineering that they pull off to make this thing work. I wonder if there's any student rocket groups in New Zealand. That's one area that I haven't really been able to learn much about in like Australia, New Zealand region. I'm sure there are some. There must be some. Yeah. And I wonder if they're also trying to potentially go to space in the near future. So if you're a student, part of a student rocket group in New Zealand or Australia, please let me know. I would like to talk about a rocket group that's not from Europe or America. I feel like that's pretty much the only rocket groups that I end up talking about. And I don't know if that's just because I'm like, you know, in Europe, and I'm from North America, so that's just like what I know. So whenever I'm looking for stuff, that's just what I find. Or is that really just where all the rocket groups are? I feel like that's not the case. I think there's more. Yeah, so really would like to know more about the New Zealand amateur rocket community. That would be interesting. I wonder if any of the other small satellite launchers are going to try to attempt reuse now that Rocket Lab is doing it. Like, it really changes the game, because Rocket Lab, like traditionally Rocket Lab has been selling their launches for about 7.5 million per launch, roughly 6 to 7 million, somewhere in there. And that's kind of looking like it's too expensive in the launch market of today, because now we have Astra. Not the Astra not student rocket group Astra, the company Astra. They are operating out of Alaska, and they sell their rocket for 2.5 million a launch. So if you think, and basically it can do basically the same stuff. It can get about 200 kilograms into low Earth orbit, just like the Electron. It doesn't quite have all this, like Rocket Lab has more special things that they can attach to the mission to make it more capable. But when you just look at it from a cost perspective, if you just want to go to low Earth orbit, like in today's market, even though Astra's vehicle isn't really tested very much at this point, you know, if you're cost sensitive, you're probably going to go towards a vehicle like that. So this is Rocket Lab's attempt to stay competitive, and maybe they'll also, I don't know, they might reduce their costs potentially if they get the recovery of the rocket going smoothly. But yeah, they might not actually end up reducing their costs. Maybe they just keep the cost the same, and you know, inflation, everyone else's costs go up, and you know, they'll be competitive in the end. Yeah, so definitely it's going to get more interesting in the small satellite launcher community with yeah, basically there's going to be lots of competition. It's not just those two. There's also a bunch of small satellite launchers that are coming up that are on the cusp of being able to launch into orbit. There's Firefly Aerospace. I know they're close. They've tested a couple of rockets, so far unsuccessfully, but they're getting there. There's also a couple in Europe that are trying to get into the market. They all going to have launchers that are going to probably come online sometime in 2023 or 2024. And they're all going to be offering prices in the, you know, couple of million range. So, yeah, Rocket Lab will have to keep up with that. One nice thing about Rocket Lab, though, is that they're not just offering the launch to low Earth orbit itself. They also have the Photon upper stage vehicle, which is able to do all kinds of crazy things. And you'll see this in the next mission that they do, where they're going to basically fire up the Photon upper stage, which is going to take them all the way to the moon. So it's not just a launcher that takes you to low Earth orbit and it's done. It can basically be like a ride all the way to wherever you want to go. I wonder if they could even go to like Mars or something. Like, I wonder if they have enough Delta V and like power budget to be able to pull that off, because that would be really cool as well. Yeah. So in a sense, Rocket Lab will always have a niche because they have that like dedicated service where they can take you anywhere. And you don't have to worry about things like power and, you know, other incidentals that come when you're trying to design a mission. the photon satellite vehicle that takes you there is kind of taking care of all that for you. It's like a bus that goes to anywhere in its range of capability, which right now is just the moon area and all orbits around the Earth. But I think that on paper it could probably take you to like Venus and Mars as well. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like it should be true. Maybe we'll see in the future. Maybe we'll see an Electron that takes some payloads to other places in the solar system. If you have any questions about anything space related, feel free to shoot in the chat. I'm always happy to answer, or talk, or anything controversial. What's your favorite launch vehicle? I would be curious what you guys think. For me, I think it'll always be the Falcon 9 because it was so monumental in shifting my understanding about rocketry and space in general. But I don't know, Electron's looking like a very close second. It's getting cooler and cooler as the days go by, that's for sure. But I think Neutron, their next vehicle, will be probably a really cool vehicle as well, because it's basically going to be able to do everything that a Falcon 9 can do, but I suspect it'll probably be able to do it even better. I wonder if they're planning to land on drone ships, or if they're going to try to bring, or if Neutron will be a return to launch site type of vehicle. Obviously, that changes the capabilities of the rocket itself. Does it make sense to reuse the battery? Well, that's actually kind of an interesting question. So, of course, the second stage of the rocket basically sheds the battery on its way into space, into orbit. The first stage doesn't do that. So the battery rides along with the first stage, and they don't jettison any batteries during the first stage burn. So essentially the first stage battery is being reused because they catch it, it comes back to the launch site, and I assume they'll just charge it back up again if it's rechargeable, and then away they go. Although I suspect the battery might not be rechargeable because they never needed to recharge it before. It was just being dumped in the ocean. Maybe they'll switch to rechargeable batteries now that they bring back the first stage with the batteries. For the second stage, though, of course, they can't reuse the battery because the whole second stage is not reused. So the whole second stage vehicle is going into the ocean anyway. The reason why they dump them halfway through the burn, though, is because if they take them all the way to orbit, then the rocket will have more mass in the end, and then it can't get as much payload into orbit. So, like, batteries are useless in orbit. They don't want to take batteries to orbit. They want to take customers to orbit that pay for the launch. So they can take more customers if they just let the batteries go. So once the batteries are dead, they're just dead weight. Get rid of them. And yeah, the second stage is going to the ocean anyway, so there's no need to reuse. But yeah, the ones on the first stage, though, are reused, I would say. if they're rechargeable. I'm not sure if they're rechargeable though. One frustrating thing about Electron is that they don't really reveal a lot about the inner workings of the rocket. So, you know, we can ascertain some things about the design and what's going on, and but some of the inner workings are kind of mysterious. They're not quite as open as SpaceX is. That's why I was so shocked that they showed the view of the top of the first stage for a couple seconds, although I suspect that was an accident. So it would be cool if someone watching this wants to analyze this and figure out what the heck is actually up there and what it's doing. I'm sure Scott Manley caught it, and he might even do a video about it. So if that's the case, watch out for his explanation. It'll probably be a good one. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I can briefly go over the payloads that they're going to deploy here in a little bit. They're going to deploy about, like, I think there's going to be like 30 of them that are being deployed. But the cool ones that I have picked out, just because they're my favorites, is number one, the Aurora mission. So Aurora Propulsion Technologies is a company that has a bunch of, they have kind of like a bunch of capabilities now that they're trying to build up, and they want to be a solution where they can just be, they can be a customer for, sorry, they can be a service provider for customers that want to deorbit their satellites that are already in space, or in the future, maybe when there's monetization behind deorbiting junk, they can also do that. This is kind of a weird situation though, because deorbiting satellites is not really a, how shall I say this? It's not really a cost-effective thing, right? Like, there's no incentive for someone to go and deorbit some old space junk that's been up there for 50 years or whatever. We try our best in the space industry not to create more space junk, but there's lots of space junk that's kind of already there, and that's not going away. So Aurora Propulsion Technologies is basically trying to create an environment where at least we have the technical capability to try and use technologies to potentially deorbit these things. And yeah, what they have here is this, what you see in the boom there on the bottom, that's the plasma break. And it's basically going to be using the upper ionospheric plasma to create a Coulomb force that's going to deorbit the satellite. So they'll be, it's kind of a weird test. They're testing how fast they can crash the satellite back into Earth. So it's going to dive bomb back into the atmosphere, and that's a successful test. Yeah, the other two that I have here are mostly just for Earth observation type stuff. So the Unseeable Labs, or the Unseen Labs, which is a very fitting title, by the way, because they're kind of trying to see the unseen. So they're basically trying to track shipping and things that are happening on the ocean that are maybe there's less visibility on. So they can track ships even if they don't have transponders. So they're just, I'm sure they just go through the image data and they just find the dots, and those are the ships, and they can track them because they have a couple of satellites that are all up there. So they have basically full surveillance over the oceans, which is pretty cool. And then yeah, Unicorn 2 has a really cool name, and they have some cool optical software that is going to be able to, Yeah, they have some cool optical software that's going to be able to basically take better pictures in the night, that are able to kind of ascertain things about how people are affecting the planet at night. So I'm sure they'll have lots of data about like forest fires and, you know, human light pollution and things like this. That's kind of the stuff that they'll be interested in. But yeah. I don't know. Does it make sense to keep the stream on until we deploy these satellites? It could be a while. I think the big summary of today is that, you know, I mean, we witnessed history in the making with the catch of this rocket. I mean, this has never been done before, and having a rocket that's reusable in this way with such a small rocket is really a challenging and monumental task. I mean, it was big with SpaceX when they were able to bring the rocket down and land it like land it at a target landing on top of the drone ship. But this is kind of like I don't know. It's not necessarily the next level, but it's a next level to be able to do it on such a small scale. And it kind of makes me wonder, like, could you have like a student rocket that would be fully reusable that goes to the Kármán line? Because this hasn't been done yet. Yeah, a fully reusable student rocket hasn't been done yet. The team that got to the Kármán line last time used a vehicle that basically crashed. It didn't crash into the desert, but it comes apart, and the booster gets damaged on the way back down, because of course you can't use a perfect parachute, because then you have to bring too much mass up to the Kármán line. But to have one where you go to the Kármán line, you bring it back down, and like you fill it back up and you launch it the next day to the Kármán line, that would be crazy. I wonder if I bet you could pull it off. You could figure out a way to design a rocket so that you could do this. It would have to be a liquid rocket, I think, and you'd have to have like an insane parachute and some way to like not damage your nozzle on the way back down. Be interesting problem. So we have a question. Can the satellite deorbit more than one satellite? That's a good question. I have no idea. I guess this is just a test satellite, so it can't really deorbit any satellite except itself. But I assume that they would want to have capabilities where they could literally go connect to an object, and I think they would just deorbit the one object, because if you push a piece of debris into a deorbit, then you are also in a deorbit. So it would have to raise its orbit again to be able to not deorbit, and that would kind of consume a lot of energy. And I don't think they could do it fast enough that they could raise their orbit high enough on just one orbit so that they don't also deorbit, if that makes any sense. So I don't think they'd be able to deorbit more than one satellite. Yeah. Maybe they could, but like the thrusters they have on the little water thrusters, they're not really powerful enough to be able to make a maneuver that would be so fast that they wouldn't deorbit themselves after they already pushed something into a deorbit. So I think that's my final answer, is that I don't think they will be pursuing this. So we have another question. If mid-air booster recovery is more feasible and cheaper than usual recovery processes? That's a good question. And the answer is, I don't think anyone really knows. I think that's what Electron is trying, right? They're trying to test to see if this is actually a really good way to recover things. There are some clear advantages. Like, it's way faster, number one. So SpaceX, when they catch their booster, like, they have to go out into the ocean, like, 1,000 kilometers. The booster lands, and then the vessel's got to like come all the way back to shore. And boats don't go very fast. Like, they go like what? The drone ship probably goes like 10 kilometers an hour or something. So that's like 100 hours of it just coming back to shore. That's like 4 days. Sometimes it takes like a week. So it's not a very fast thing. Like you can't land a Falcon 9 booster and then launch that same booster the next day, because it's not there yet. But with the helicopter recovery, because you're catching it on the helicopter, you can literally just fly it back to the launch site if you want to, or fly it to a spot that's much closer to shore. So you can feasibly get back your booster like the same day. So in terms of being able to rapidly reuse things, I think that it's definitely a step in the right direction. What will be more interesting though is how, like, what the wear and tear is on the engine itself. So one advantage to Falcon 9's recovery is that they do a re-entry burn. And the advantage of this is that by lighting the engine as they're going through the highest, like, peak aerodynamic forces and heating in the re-entry, they actually protect the engine by lighting it from the plasma that builds up around the vehicle. So counterintuitively, lighting the engine actually saves the engine. So I don't know if that's the same thing for the Electron booster. I think that because they don't light the engine, they might actually get more wear and tear on the rocket engines themselves. So it'd be curious to see after, like, if they try to reuse a booster like 10 times, if they can really keep using the same engines, because that's basically what Falcon 9 can do. They can just keep reusing the booster with minimal refurbishment even after 10 reuses. So until we really see the same, like, reuse history behind the Electron, I don't think we'll really have an answer to that question. But it is an interesting one. Yeah. I'll be excited to see a fleet of Electron boosters building up, though, in New Zealand. Because that's a problem that SpaceX had, is that basically they had nowhere to put these boosters. They had so many of them. If they really get the reuse down, though, they can start focusing more on developing Neutron, which I think is kind of the future for Rocket Lab anyway. It'll be a more capable rocket for sure. It's really amazing how fast that, like, orbital velocity really is. Like, it's gone from New Zealand just like 30 minutes ago, and now it's at Portugal. So really, yeah. If only we could just travel around the globe like that. 30 seconds or 30 minutes and you're across the world. If Gwen Shotwell has her way, it'll be like that. All right. I don't know if it's worth sticking around all the way to the payload deployment. But I can just describe briefly what's going to happen. Essentially, the payloads are kind of like affixed to the second stage of the vehicle, and then they're basically just going to release a latch, and then they'll fly off into space. So it's not totally super exciting. It's not like a Dragon deployment where you see like the big capsule fly away. Yeah, really glad to see this mission go, and really happy that it was actually a success today. And it inspires me a little bit to think about how we can make amateur rockets that go to space more reusable. I think I really want to see a group try to do a reuse where they literally reuse the same rocket and launch it like within a couple days. I think they'll be a really cool demonstration of like a real proper reuse of that type of a rocket. And yeah, it would have to use some sort of parachutes most likely. Although I will put a shout out to the Edinburgh University because they have a rocket group that's there, and they are actually experimenting with propulsive landing. So this is like even crazier for an amateur rocket that they would try to do this. But they also have ambitions to go to the carbon line, and at least I think they do. So imagine if they could put those two things together. They could put together a liquid rocket, propulsive landing, carbon line, student group. That would also be pretty incredible. All right, I'm just talking about my crazy ideas now. So this has been the Astra livecast of the Falcon, of the Electron. I can't even, I'm so used to having recoveries be with SpaceX. No, this is Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab has recovered a rocket. For the first time, we now have 2 private companies that are recovering rockets. Crazy. Looking forward to what happens in the future. I'm sure there's going to be a day where literally recovery will be so boring, it'll just be expected. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And until then, I invite you to keep expanding your horizons.